Tonight on the Readout.
Student debt cancellation will change and save lives. The court knows President Biden has the legal authority to cancel student debt. And they have a clear and simple choice here. Uphold the law, and we can call it a day.
That's Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley speaking passionately about the need for student loan debt relief, with the conservative Supreme Court majority poised to possibly kill President Biden's relief plan. Congresswoman Pressley will join me. Also tonight, in some of the red states with new abortion restrictions, exceptions were built into those laws. But few of those exceptions are actually being granted, putting women's lives at risk. Plus, House Republicans finally have their chance to hold hearings on their anti-Fauci, anti-mask, pro-ivermectin conspiracy theories, as a government report raises new questions about the origin of the virus. We begin the Readout tonight with history repeating itself. Because here's the thing, when you try to erase it, like the Florida governor wants to do, you are doomed to repeat it. Over the weekend, the New York Times published a stunning account of more than 100 migrant children, largely from Central America, who, according to the Times reporting, were working overnight shifts and dangerous jobs for companies large and small throughout the U.S. According to the report, children stitch Made in America tags into J. Crew shirts in Los Angeles. They bake dinner rolls sold at Walmart and Target, processed milk used in Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and helped debone chicken sold at Whole Foods. As recently as this fall, middle schoolers made Fruit of the Loom socks in Alabama. In Michigan, children make auto parts used by Ford and General Motors. In other words, nearly all of us are likely buying and using goods fabricated by children's hands. We are all implicated in this story. These migrant children who've traveled thousands of miles are under intense pressure to send money home to their families or to the people who sponsor them in the United States, many of them extorting the children for smuggling fees, rent, and living expenses. These children are ostensibly under the purview of the Department of Health and Human Services, who assign them caseworkers to make sure they're cared for while they are in this country. The New York Times reports that in interviews with more than 60 caseworkers, however, most independently estimated that about 2/3 of all unaccompanied migrant children ended up working full-time. Michigan Congresswoman Hillary Scholten, who has one of these factories in her district, is rightly appalled.
Stories of kids dropping out of school, collapsing from exhaustion, and even losing limbs to machinery. These are the things that one might expect to find in a Charles Dickens or Upton Sinclair novel, but not an account of everyday life in America in 2023. Surely not here in the land of the free, where child labor protections have been on the books for nearly a century.
Now, to be clear, this is outsourced labor. None of these companies intentionally hire children, as far as the reporting has shown. And when asked by the Times, a number of them said they would investigate the claims or sever ties with the companies who help outsource the jobs. But again, their decisions implicate all of us because we benefit from the blood, sweat, and tears of these child laborers. I mean, you've probably chowed down on a bowl of Cheerios packed by a teenager, or enjoyed a bowl of Ben & Jerry's ice cream made from milk processed by a child laborer. Earlier this month, Packers Sanitation Services paid a $1.5 million fine for employing 102 children to work in dangerous meatpacking facility jobs across 8 states. And just last summer, Reuters discovered that kids as young as 12, many of them migrants, were working at a metal stamping plant owned by Hyundai. Last week, NBC reported that Packers Sanitation Services disciplined an employee who hired the same known minor twice under 2 different identities. And if this story sounds like some pre-20th century horror story, that might be because you know history. And while some folks who just so happen to work in Tallahassee, Florida, might not want you to remember, America's first big business was slavery and indentured servitude. Literally, millions of young enslaved men, women, and children were the disposable fuel that created the booming economy of this country. And every consumer of cotton or rice or coffee or any number of goods produced by that labor benefited from it, from the insurance companies to the shippers to the end users here and around the world. It made Southern planters richer than they could have ever imagined back in England. And then after the Civil War and during the Industrial Revolution, when American companies still wanted the cheapest possible labor and more of it, children became the ideal employees. They were smaller, cheaper, and uneducated, which meant that they were less likely to complain. In 1938, Congress passed the Fair Labor Standards Act, which effectively banned oppressive child labor and barred children under the age of 16 from holding non-agricultural jobs, and made it so that teens from 16 to 18 could not do hazardous employment. Now, notice that they let the farms keep the exploitation going, which was why Southern senators fought to successfully exclude black workers from those protections by leaving farm workers and domestic workers out, which were still the low-paid jobs held by most African Americans, including children. Still, the Fair Labor Act did establish a standard rule for labor practices that are being skirted to this day. According to data from the U.S. Labor Department's Wage and Hour Division, child labor violations have been on the rise since 2015. Modern-day Republicans, led by the twice-impeached former president, have led the charge on deregulation. And just like in East Palestine, Ohio, Donald Trump and his various agencies proposed rolling back regulations that protected workers and children. One USDA food safety official openly admitted that safety wasn't a top priority because, quote, we don't regulate worker safety. At the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, Trump officials sought to loosen reporting requirements for injury and illness data for large companies. And at one point, his Department of Labor sought to unwind decades-old youth labor protections by allowing teenagers to work longer hours under some of the most hazardous workplace conditions. States across this country took the baton from Trump and went even further. In Iowa, Republican legislators, who have a supermajority, introduced a bill to expand the types of work that 14 and 15-year-olds would be permitted to do as part of approved training programs. The bill would extend allowable work hours and exempt employers from liability if those young workers are sickened, injured, or killed on the job. Minnesota is looking to pass similar legislation. And yesterday, the Biden administration announced that it was creating a new task force to crack down on exploitation of the illegal exploitation of migrant children for labor in the United States. Enforcement of child labor laws will most likely be a top issue for Julie Su, President Biden's newly announced nominee for Secretary of Labor. If confirmed, Su will be the Biden administration's first AAPI cabinet secretary. And joining me now is Charles Blow, New York Times columnist and MSNBC political analyst, and Maria Teresa Kumar, president and CEO of Voto Latino and an MSNBC contributor. I don't even know where to begin, but I'm going to start with you, Charles, because you have the disadvantage of not being here at the table with us. I mean, when I read this story, which is horrific, and I hope everyone takes the time to read it if you can get access to the Times, get through the paywall, it sounded like indentured servitude to me. These kids essentially have to send money home to their families. They are going to school, in some cases, full time on no sleep because they're working all night. They're literally child laborers creating everything you could imagine that we use consumer-wise.
Absolutely. And it is a heartbreaking story because you put yourself in the shoes of these children. First of all, they should never have to make the decisions that they are having to make, beginning with having to trek alone to this country, but many of them feel they have no other choice, that the economic conditions and the social conditions and the political conditions in their own countries are so horrible that they would leave a family and walk alone for all that distance. And then to get here and be placed with a sponsor who may or may not be looking out for your interests at all. I mean, one of the things that comes through in the story is that some of the sponsors appear to be running some sort of, money-making, pimping proposition. I mean, there's no other way for me to phrase this. I mean, they're making money off of the children. They encourage some of the children to go out and get this work. If they send them to school, they get the work after they go to school. None of us on this screen right now are working the hours that some of these children are working. I mean, it is incredible, and they have no choice, or they feel like they have no choices, and the federal government is falling down on the job. They're just not being able to track this many children, and there were tens of thousands of children that they basically just lost track of. What do you mean you've lost track of tens of thousands of children. It is an incredible, heartbreaking story.
It's interesting. You and I were in South Texas a few years ago when I was doing my weekend show, and we met all of these kids who had come on their own. They were being held, I guess, and HHS was ostensibly responsible for them. And it was clear that they weren't able to track the parents, weren't able to track the families. But talk a little bit more about this vicious cycle, because some of these kids are willingly leaving their families because they're afraid their families will starve in Guatemala. And so they're saying, I'm going to go and I'm now going to try to financially support, or their parents couldn't make it through. And so they're going and coming, and then they're just being literally exploited.
So the best part of this New York Times investigative reporting is that we finally have blown the lid off what the majority of Latinos in this country know what's happening. The fact that we see so many corporations right now turning a blind eye, saying that they don't know, that is not true, Joy, because the way this operation works, and I will give you a little bit of an under the hood, my family used to work in the labor, in the wine country. And I would ask my grandfather, who worked the fields, is like, how do you find the people that work with you? He says, the vineyards, they subcontract a coyote, the human trafficker, and the human trafficker goes in basically through WhatsApp and other mechanisms, tells people how many people they need and how much they're going to get paid, and they bring them through across the border and send them to the fields. And then because they're subcontracting, those vineyard folks say, I don't know how these people get there.
Yeah.
And so what this incredible investigative reporting shows is that children are caught up. And the questions are to ask is, why are they leaving their countries? In Guatemala, as we saw in those investigative reports, we learned it's because of climate change. Yeah. They literally cannot harvest in their own homes. But then you have individuals that are clearly these coyotes that are saying, I can sponsor up to 20 children. Well, shame on the U.S. government that they are not cracking down on them, but also shame on the corporations who ostensibly say that they do not know, because we know that is such an intricate way that these individuals actually are hiring undocumented labor, whether it's children or adults, because what they do is that they say, I'm going to contract from a subcontractor who will contract from a subcontractor and turn a blind eye, and then I am basically legally not bound. Shame on them.
And the thing about it is, the business, my poor team, I say these things all the time to them repeatedly on a loop, but this country, capitalism, the basis of America's capitalist enterprise, in the very beginning was free labor. Free labor, which built an empire in this country.
That's right.
Made the southern states super rich until they lost the free labor. Ever since then, America's big business and big agriculture has been trying to find a way to replace that free labor with labor that's as cheap as it can get. Well, there's nothing cheaper than a child who can't fight back, who can't unionize, who's literally essentially an indentured servant. We have replaced black and slave labor with undocumented labor and then accused people of being illegal as if they are the ones breaking the law. They're being compelled here.
Well, and I want to say it's such a sophisticated operations of recruitment that happens. People, most of them don't show up without a job. They already know the job that they're destined to go. They know exactly where they're going to go. They know if they're going to be doing construction. They know if they're going to be in the meatpacking district. These are the skills that are actively asked for by the subcontractor 3 times removed from a place like Tyson's Chicken. And this is what we need to have a conversation with, because the Republicans are going to now try to absolve themselves from this responsibility. But one of the reasons that they're exploiting child labor is because we do not have an immigration policy that actually allows people to come out of the shadows and actually allows us to negotiate what is the labor that we need in order to maintain our industry.
And isn't the reason that we don't have these policies, Charles, because these big businesses don't want to pay the kind of labor cost they'd have to pay to hire an adult who could fight back and form a union. They want it cheap. And so everyone's looking the other way and pretending, I didn't know how my chicken nuggets were made. I'm just selling chicken nuggets. Sure. They do have to know at some level. It's all about cheap labor.
Yes, but not only are the corporations responsible here, American citizens are also responsible here. We got so addicted.
Oh, have we lost Charles? Oh, no. I think we've lost him.
But I
can almost finish his thought. We love cheap stuff. Right. We love to buy things that don't cost a lot of money. We want it as cheap as, and we don't want to think about where it comes from, right? People want the nuggets, but they don't want to think about the poor chicken and what it's dealing with. It's getting slaughtered.
Well, it's unseemly to think, but the way you opened your show is absolutely, every single one is complicit. We are complicit in this, and the only way we make change is to demand that Tyson's Chicken, for example, actually changes their contracting laws. And the Viennese government actually creates repercussions for those individuals that are not just based on fines, but that are ensuring that we're doing well by these children at the end of the day.
100%. And I was shook when I read this story because I'm thinking, I use that. We're all implicated in this. Charles Blow, and I'm sorry for the issues with technology that prevented us from hearing your final thought. And Maria Tessa Kumar, we call her M15K because we're friends. And up next, not only are abortion rights being seriously curtailed in our post-Roe America, well, patients are struggling to get abortions even when exceptions to state bans theoretically should apply. Stay with us.